So now that you're working as a freelance editor with writers, what's the biggest difference between how you're working with writers now and how you worked with them as a literary agent, or is there a difference?
Yeah, I am much more receptive to, this is going to sound horrible, but I am much more receptive to the writer's input in terms of their goals.
That does sound a little terrible. Please elaborate.
I will explain. When you're a literary agent, you're in this sort of position of authority where you kind of know better. And this was part of like my fabulous Brooklyn life. I was like, oh man, I got swagger. I'm a literary agent. Like there is definitely a power dynamic between you and the client. Not that you want to take advantage of it, but you're the one having the meetings. You're the one who's paid to know what the editors want, what the publishers are publishing. There's a certain sort of like aura of knowledge that comes with being a literary agent. And so there's maybe a little bit more clout to you when you talk to a client and they say, oh, I'm thinking of doing this, when you're like, that's a terrible idea or whatever, you try to be nicer. But there's this sort of like, look, I was just at Harper this afternoon. They would never go for it, like, you sort of really lead the conversation because you know what the publishers are acquiring at that very moment and how to sort of help shepherd this in that direction, because it's assumed that if somebody's working with a literary agent that they kind of want the book deal that you're going to go source for them. And so now that I am a freelance editor, it's a much bigger part of the conversation where they're like, I want to publish independently. How do I make this the best? This is my vision. How do I make this manuscript accomplish my vision in the best way possible? Make it the strongest thing that I want it to be. With a literary agent, there tends to be a lot more kind of shaping, if at all, that's the right word for it. With a freelance editor, I stand by my feedback. I give sometimes strong, challenging feedback with a lot of conviction behind it to my clients because I feel like that's what they're showing up for. And my best clients are the ones that want to be challenged, the ones that want to learn. But if somebody's like, you know what, you are going to tell me that I can't write a picture book with an 87-year-old main character, but that's my dream. So how do we make it work within my goals, within my parameters? Because traditionally you don't have a picture book that stars an adult character. That doesn't tend to fly as well. The characters tend to be kind of in line with the audience, which is, 3, 5, 7-year-old. And so that's one of the golden rules of picture books in the traditional model. But if somebody's like, I want to tell the best dang story about this 87-year-old picture book protagonist, then we're going to have to figure out a way to make it work together. So it's a lot more collaborative in terms of the writer bringing their intention to the table as well.
That sounds really freeing for you because now you can maybe tackle some projects you couldn't have before.
Yeah, it's really creatively challenging because I have my traditional upbringing, if you will. I have all of those perspectives that I gathered working in the traditional model. But now I also have to think about story in maybe ways that I haven't before. I have to not just deploy the old writing chestnut advice. I have to really challenge myself to come up with new perspectives. And that's what I love. Like every day that I show up to work is a different day. I'm working on a different manuscript. I'm working with a different writer. I have to take all of those things into account. And so it's like, even though I'm working with somebody else's creative input, like the creative work on the page isn't mine, it's highly creative for me to come into that and sort of see how I can be best of service.